Candace Owens is a very fascinating person. She went from being hardcore into left-leaning, fighting oppression sort of stuff because she was the victim of a hate crime. And that compelled her to then at one point make a website where you could dox people for bad behavior online, to now is a darling of right-wing politics. And when I say that Candace Owens is an empty skull, I really mean it. There is nothing of substance inside of her brain cavity. There's nothing in there. It's just whatever needs to be said, no matter how fucking terrible it will make her look, and no matter how inhuman and disgusting she comes off, like she's more than willing to do it because she has gotten what she always wanted. She's famous. Very famous. And, you know, sometimes all it costs really is your soul. Yes, that was her work. I think it was called Social Autopsy. I want to remember this accurately. Candace Owens, Social Autopsy. Yeah. The Strange Tale of Social Autopsy, the anti-harasser startup that descended into Gamergate trutherism. Oh Jesus. Okay. We're not delving too deep in anything that has to do with Gamergate because Jesus fucking Christ. Anyway, so she went on Tucker Carlson, and this is gross. So, but I have many thoughts about this because this is something that I really care about.
Candace Owens is the host of Candace, and we're delighted to have her join us tonight. Candace, thanks so much for coming on. Once you take a bigger look, and we could have gone on at greater length there, but at how this is funded by NGOs and by taxpayer dollars, the amount of money that's going to people to do drugs on the sidewalk, destroying our cities, which they didn't build and they don't own.
Okay, hang on. All right. There's a whole lot that just happened all of a sudden. Oh boy. So Dems are deliberately making it easier to be homeless and harder to be middle class. Number one, it is incredibly easy to be homeless. It's incredibly hard to not be homeless given certain circumstances. How they're deliberately making it easier to be homeless, as if it sounds like being homeless is like a big choice, which I understand extenuating circumstances, sometimes it is. And harder to be middle class, I think you can put that blame on a lot of people. I would say that the dissolution of the middle class has been not just a perpetual, but an intentional eroding done for decades by all of the politicians. All of them. Every single one. Anyway, so let's pull that back a little bit here.
A bigger look, and we could have gone on at greater length there, but at how this is funded by NGOs and by taxpayer dollars, the amount of money that's going to people to do drugs on the sidewalk, destroying our cities, which they didn't build and they don't own.
Did you build it? Did you build the cities? Do you own the cities, Tucker? But also, like, paying people to do drugs is stupid. It's inflammatory. It's very inhuman when it comes to talking about how addiction actually works. And on top of that, too, like, technically, if you've ever paid taxes, and I mean ever, yeah, you do own the sidewalks. You do own all of these fucking these aspects of our basic civic structure, the way in which we operate. That's what taxes are for. That's how public property works, you know? Like, what the fuck?
You really realize this is a manufactured crisis.
Gosh, Tucker, there is so much that I want to say here. I know that I'm not going to have enough time. You're talking about NGOs, and I can't say to the American people enough. If you really want to look into what's going on, please understand, yes, it was manufactured. Yes, this was a plot. It does not allow people to look at you and issue pejoratives like you're a conspiracy theory. You can look this up yourself.
Okay. All right. So, like... NGOs are non-governmental organizations. They include international charities such as Oxfam, Save the Children, research institutes, churches, community-based organizations, lobby groups, and professional associations. In this case, they are very specifically using NGOs to avoid what they want to say, which is welfare programs. That's what they're trying to avoid. They don't want to say welfare programs because that for some reason makes people switch off from thinking about it. If you call it instead an NGO and you don't call it welfare or community support programs, then you can paint this as something of maybe a corruption, where the government is giving tax dollars to these mysterious NGOs who are handing people money to go buy their heroin or some shit like that. If you say, instead that this is going towards like social support programs, people are like, wait. So it's a very fascinating twisting of language just to get that just juicy ounce of like paranoia, and it's so gross.
Conspiracy theorists. You can look this up yourself. Take a look at the World Economic Forum. The person that heads it up is a man named Klaus Schwab. He released a book in 2020 talking about how the COVID pandemic represented an opportunity for them to transform the world, for them to abolish private property. Look at every...
Yes. So, I still have a little bit of a frog in my throat. Sorry about that. So what she's talking about is a conspiracy theory called the Great Reset. And the Great Reset is largely based upon some ideas that Klaus Schwab put out in the World Economic Forum to basically revitalize and reinvent how we address basically economics and how we view society and wealth inequality. And he did say that COVID did present a unique opportunity to be able to maybe help that. Now, if you know anything about what Klaus Schwab was talking about, whether you agree with him or not, you can clearly see that nothing that he was actually pushing for has been done. We are not in the same direction as what he was talking about. But this is a conspiracy theory, usually parroted around far-right fucking circles, all right? Because it can go pretty side by side with some other really troubling fucking conspiracy theories. So, yeah, it's pretty crazy. Anyway, she didn't really say anything of interest there yet.
Everything they're doing, and you understand this is exactly what they're after, right? Eviction moratoriums, basically saying you have to allow people that are effectively homeless to live in your home. You're making entirely no money. How are these people going to be able to pay back their mortgages? They're not going to be able to. They're going to default.
Oh, those poor landlords. Oh, dang. Now, look. I'm not like anti-landlord, like fucking, crazy in that manner. But at the same time, if I have to think about whether or not my priorities would be somebody being thrown out onto the street versus, that this might impact somebody else economically, I tend to favor human existence in life over somebody else's pocketbook. I don't think that you can put a monetary value on how much somebody else's life is worth. That being said, I don't think that necessarily the people who own property need to be taking the brunt of this. I think that is exactly when we need to be using government programs and our tax dollars to try and help people to improve the human condition. I just don't understand why that's controversial. It's very strange. Evidence for the Great Reset usually boils down to, hey, look, a disaster happened and they're reacting to it. Why would they do that? I know. Dude, I know. That shit fucking happens all the time.
People are going to be scooping up their properties that were once owned by people, hardworking American middle-class citizens, that were maintaining their lifestyles before the government shut this down.
Yeah, see, all middle-class people are landlords. It's just twisting of language to make people fucking afraid. And it's really bizarre.
Look at these inner cities and you go, why do they want these problems? Why are they funding these problems? Why do they want drug addicts? Who on earth would ever fund a center to allow people to do drugs? Well, you're looking at a government that...
Yeah. This is, they're not even getting into anything of substance. This is just regurgitating panic. And it has absolutely no nuance. Largely when they're saying this type of thing, it's because they are trying to put a condemnation on programs that give people access to, safe needles, or if you are an addict and you are going to use, having a safe place that you can do that. I would say even more so, it would behoove a compassionate and smart country to maintain some degree of safety in those things that people are going to do. And it's sad because, like, if we could eradicate addiction, that would be wonderful. That'd be wonderful. And I don't think it's something that is out of the reach to do and to knock down. There have been plenty of countries that have taken a very, very progressive stance on how addiction works. It's not a crime. It's considered a crisis. And so people are responded to not as criminals when they have a problem with addiction and substance abuse. They're treated as somebody who needs help. And they have seen that addiction numbers, overdose numbers, the amount of people that go homeless because of this goes down. And they did that by putting money into these programs, not taking it out. Because if you take it out, how does that fucking help anything? You know?
Wants a system of dependence. To me, I look at the situation and I say what we're seeing is a modernized system of slavery. This is slavery in 2022, and they are proliferating this under the guise of COVID-19.
I don't even really know what she means necessarily by slavery, but I will say that that's fucking stupid. Slavery is a very specific thing. It is, removing someone's freedom and forcing them to produce, and it's or do something. Whereas this is basically like, you could say there's economic enslavement, and to some degree I can kind of agree with that. But if you're making a comparison to slavery, I don't think it works. Do we have a system that perpetually keeps people in poverty? Yes. Capitalism. Now, I'm not an anti-capitalist, but I do think that we don't respond to the problems with capitalism in a good way. I do think that capitalism can be overwhelmingly useful, and I tend to be, I think capitalism is not necessarily a bad thing, but I think it's a bad thing when we see the bad things that happen because of it, and we just don't do anything about it. And the people who suffer from that are people, human beings.
I agree with you. I agree with every word of that. I wish I didn't, but I sincerely do. I wonder why there isn't at least one city in America. It says, I don't care what I don't care what anybody says. You can't crap on my sidewalk. Get the hell out of here, buddy. Move on.
And where does that person go? Where does that person go? Like, I don't understand. Oh, no, because I said I wasn't hardcore anti-capitalist. No, please don't leave me. I still like making money off my YouTube videos, so I can't just be like, fuck capitalism, because it's the inhuman response to this, because and it falls in line with the anti-vax stuff that's been happening lately too, especially with Tucker Carlson, especially with people like in the mainstream right wing who have been pushing this sort of thing. It's selfishness and it's inhumanity. This notion of like, well, why in the fuck should I wear a mask? If it doesn't protect me, it just protects you. Fuck you. It's selfishness. And I would say it's the opposite of patriotism. Taking a stance that someone else suffering and maybe being a burden is not my fucking problem, and I want them to go away. And it's not patriotic. It's not humane. It's disgusting. And I think it's vile. I think the very things that we should be using our collective tax dollars on. And that's the thing, okay? Maybe for you guys who are mad that I'm not an anti-capitalist, maybe this will wind you back. Capitalism can exist as a basic function, but when it fails, the answer is socialism, because we already engage in a form of socialism anyway with our tax dollars, with the way that we fund things. And a country really honestly should be judged by how it treats the least of it, the most unfortunate, the poorest and the sickest, those most vulnerable, and utilizing our collective money to try and help those people to elevate them elevates us, all of us, instead of just kicking somebody down the street and saying, get the fuck out of here, so they can go, shit on a different sidewalk? Why don't we give them a toilet? What the fuck? Just saying, man.
Like, that is, I think, the way that all civilizations have always reacted to threats like this, like drug addiction and vagrancy. Why does nobody do that now?
Wait.
Nobody does that.
I need the context. Um, one of the main reasons why I'm still pro-capitalism in a certain extent is because of innovation. That's really the biggest reason. I think that the notion of competition can lead to incredible technological advances, and I think that technology is literally the thing that will save this fucking species from itself. So that's usually where it's at. Now, does that work perfectly these days? No. There are plenty of monopolies that need to get fucking busted up, if you ask me.
Reacted to threats like...
Wait, okay. Full context. I want to know what kind of threat he's trying to tell us about.
Move on. Like, that is, I think, the way that all civilizations have always reacted to threats like this, like drug addiction and vagrancy. Why does nobody do that now?
The way that they always respond to it is just to fucking tell people to fuck off, to move somewhere else. What the fuck, dude? They do that here in Eugene. Eugene has been trying and failing to be addressing the homeless problem quite a bit. There has been some good motion recently, especially with the COVID thing. But they were having problems. They'd bust up a camp, and then a camp would spring up somewhere else, and then people would freak out, and they'd have to start someone somewhere else. And it fucking drives me crazy. It drives me crazy. It's inhuman. It doesn't actually help anything.
Nobody does that now because there's been such federal overreach. And I will say in America, the one guard that we have against this is state rights. Thank God for governors that are standing up and saying absolutely not,
True.
no matter how hard the Biden administration tries to overreach and say, we are absolutely going to have this. We need to fund more money. The government is creating problems because they want you to turn to the government for answers. And I always say Black America was the experiment with this. They issued trillions of dollars in welfare, and Black Americans are factually speaking poorer today than they were before the welfare system began coming after them and tearing apart their families. They are now making that system for everybody. They want every single American dependent on the government for food, for family, for drugs, whatever it is. They want to.
It's so fucking crazy. It's again, you strip all the context away. You say, wow, we haven't really done a whole and the whole notion of it being like welfare is what destroyed the Black family is bullshit. You can see examples of that very same thing happening with poor, disadvantaged white people, Hispanic people, even Asian people. There are a lot of poor Asians out there. You can see that effect repeated over and over and over. It has really nothing to do necessarily with welfare, because all welfare manages to usually do is keep people from starving to death. It does not necessarily elevate. Not really. And the further and further as things have been devolving, especially with the housing market, with everything going crazy, with stagnant wages over and over and over and over again, it's more expensive and cost prohibitive to buy a house. College is financially out of reach for most people unless you want to get into economic slavery to the government through student loans. There are lots of problems that you could point to, but instead, in Candace Owens' little vacuous, hollow, empty rattle can of a fucking head, it's, what is it again? Oh, thank you. Okay. Yeah, it's welfare. It's crazy.
A system of slavery, and I cannot say this enough. People, look it up. You have to look up. They want a global technocracy. You are not a conspiracy theorist. Do not allow them to gaslight you. Something very sinister is going on, not just in America, Tucker, all across the world.
That is totally true. Candace Owens.
That fucking Tucker's face. Oh, man. Yeah. So it's just something that I really wanted to rant about a little bit, which is really the reason why I record these segments for my second channel. Because I hate it. It drives me fucking nuts. We should have a society that is ruled by compassion and reason, and humanity, but we do not. This entire segment has been basically a bunch of overprivileged jackasses who don't understand the true suffering of people living on the street, struggling with drugs. Fuck, dude, every day being reminded that their hopes and their dreams are gone. or suffering from desperate mental illness. And instead they're just like, nah, fuck you. Just keep moving down the street, you drunky, druggy fucking piece of fuck you. Yeah, I hate these people. It's just so gross. It's so gross. We should be elevating people. We should be lifting them up, not just kicking them down the road like a fucking can.